Welcome back, guys. We're here in the Coach's Corner. We're going to give you our NCAA Tournament bracket breakdown. I'm here with several of my students, and I'll let them introduce themselves as we pass the microphone around the table. We're going to start in the Sweet 16 round just for time purposes, and we're going to go ahead and get into our Sweet 16. We're going to start in the East region. As we go through the brackets, the guys are going to talk, some about their favorite team, their favorite matchups, their favorite players, whatever they really choose to talk about. We're going to get you all the way down to the championship game and tell you who's going to be cutting the nets down this year in Minneapolis. So without further ado, let's get into it in the East. Obviously, the favorite at basically 2-1 to cut the nets down are your Duke Blue Devils. Duke's going to get to the Sweet 16, I feel like, fairly easily, where they'll get a rematch, and in my eyes, with an ACC opponent in Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is about 100 miles from campus. They're going to travel well to Washington, D.C. in the Sweet 16 matchup with Duke. However, Duke is going to prevail because they happen to have Zion Williamson. Down to the next Sweet 16 matchup there in D.C., you've got a potential LSU-Michigan State matchup. But I went unconventional due to LSU's off-the-court things they're dealing with. I feel like karma is a real thing, and there's always a double-digit seed that seems to make it out into the Sweet 16, and I'm going to go with Belmont. Belmont's a team that I watched in the Ohio Valley Tournament. They can really shoot the basketball. They're smart. They're well coached. They're disciplined, and I feel like that's what's going to get them to the next level and get to the Sweet 16, where they'll take on the Spartans in Michigan State. As they say, there's the months of the year are January, February, Izzo, because that's just how it tends to work for Michigan State. They always play their best basketball this time of year, and this year's no different. So Michigan State will advance and set up the blue blood colossal matchup of Duke-Michigan State in the Elite Eight. So moving on down to the West. The West is where you'll find my first major upset in that of Syracuse advancing past Gonzaga to get to the Sweet 16. Syracuse, I feel like, and I'll back up my thoughts as to why I feel like this could happen, and that's simply because of Syracuse's style. Syracuse plays a 2-3 zone. They're long, they're lanky, and I feel like that's a hard thing to prepare for. You don't see it a lot this year, throughout the year. Syracuse plays in the ACC, and I feel like with 3 number 1 seeds in the tournament from the ACC, they're going to be well prepared to take on any team. And Gonzaga to me is the most vulnerable number 1 seed, and I just don't think that all 4 ones are getting out. So that's why I got Syracuse coming out to get to the Sweet 16, where they'll take on Florida State team that just showed out well in the ACC tournament. They're going to get past my 12 seed upset that I've got of Murray State. Murray State's going to squeak by Marquette in the first round to take on Florida State, but Florida State will come out of that second round game to take on Syracuse. Let's go drop down here to the second part of the Sweet 16 there, and you've got a potential Buffalo team that could be a good story, but it's going to be a short story because Texas Tech is going to take them out and get to the Sweet 16. And then, as always, the Michigan and the boys are playing good ball this time of year, and they're going to be right there again. So Syracuse, Florida State, Texas Tech, and Michigan will be my 4 teams from the West. Moving things along here up to the South, Virginia's coming out, getting past Ole Miss to get to the Sweet 16. Not very confident in this pick, but I do like Ethan Happ from Wisconsin. I feel like he's a senior that's going to kind of will them to win, to get out to the Sweet 16, to getting through Oregon and Kansas State. Your Boilermakers, no IU this year, so the Boilermakers are going to have to represent Indiana, and I feel like they will get past a tough Villanova team in the second round to make it out to the Sweet 16, where they'll take on the Volunteers of Tennessee. Tennessee has been number 1 overall this year for a good chunk of the season, and they kind of slowed up down the stretch, but they got it going again in the SEC tournament, where they fell to Auburn in the championship game. But Tennessee's a team I like to come out, and they'll take on Purdue in the Sweet 16. And last but not least, down to the Midwest, If you all watched the ACC tournament at all, you saw a potential Final Four preview of North Carolina and Duke. That game was high-paced. That game was up and down. And anyways, North Carolina is going to advance into the Sweet 16. The first matchup of that region in the Sweet 16 will be North Carolina-Auburn. Auburn just won the ACC tournament. They're playing good basketball. And, I see them advancing past Kansas, who Kansas has had an un-Kansas-like year, not being a 1 or a 2 seed, not winning the Big 12. I feel like they're getting eliminated in the second round by Auburn. And last matchup of the Sweet 16, I have Iowa State coming out of that top half of that bottom half of the bracket there. They're going to get past Ohio State, and then they're going to beat Houston. Iowa State is playing good basketball. They've got 5 guys that can fill it up at any point in time, and they will be there to take on the Wildcats of Kentucky. Kentucky is, basically doing what Kentucky does. They're right there. They're playing good basketball. They're extremely talented. So Iowa State, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Auburn round out my Sweet 16. So took a little longer than I wanted it to, but, hey, this is March Madness, and we're going to give it, everything it deserves and talk hoops for the next 30 minutes. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Jack Weiniger. Jack is a senior basketball player, is going to Hanover to play basketball. So, Jack, let us know. Start with the East and just kind of work your way around, all right?
So for the Sweet 16, I got Duke and St. Louis. I have Liberty and St. Louis both upsetting their opponents, so it'd be an upset for round 2. LSU I have winning. I think they're going to be too much to handle with Maryland. And Michigan State, I love my Cards, but I don't think Louisville can pull it off and go to the Sweet 16. Gonzaga, I think, is probably one of the weakest 1 seeds in the history of college basketball. FSU will easily make it past that opponent. And Buffalo and Nevada, the 2 6 and 7 seeds, will easily make it to the Sweet 16 with Michigan and Texas Tech. In the South region, I have Virginia and Wisconsin. I picked Virginia to win this one because Ethan Happ seems to disappear at the end of games and can't hit little baby hooks from 5 feet away. Even though I don't like Purdue much, I think they're going to get to the Sweet 16 and face Tennessee. I have Villanova losing first round to St. Mary's, but I think Tennessee will be too much to handle for Purdue, so they're going to the Elite 8. And then I think North Carolina in the Midwest bracket is just going to steamroll over everybody. I have them going to the Final Four. But Kansas, I think, is going to make the Sweet 16. I think Georgia State's 40% from 3 points going to easily make it to the Sweet 16 with how hot they're going to be. And I think Kentucky's also going to make it over Wofford.
What's up, guys? Jack Townsend here. I'm going to talk a little bit about my bracket. On the East, in the Sweet 16, obviously I got, most of your guys' favorites, the Duke Blue Devils, which is, every year they're just well coached, probably have the best coach in college basketball in my opinion. So, they're obviously going to make a easy Sweet 16 run. And I got a upset in number 5 seed Mississippi State, making it to the Sweet 16. And then my next game I have the 2 favorites, LSU and Michigan State, just because Michigan State is also well coached. Like Coach said, Izzo, it's going to be his month because the Spartans will always come to play in March. And LSU is having one of their better years. So I got that. That'll be a great matchup in the East side. Moving down to the West side, I have Gonzaga. Gonzaga is always tough this time of the year too. And Florida State. I think Florida State's having one of their better years too. And I think we'll see a good matchup there in the West side. My second game in the West will be Texas Tech and Michigan. Like I said, Michigan, Big Ten school. Texas Tech also playing good basketball right now. That'll be a good matchup in the West side too. Moving down to the South, I have Virginia. I have Virginia and Wisconsin. Wisconsin being another Big Ten school, probably the best conference in college basketball right now. Wisconsin being a 5 seed and Virginia being a 1 seed. Indy native Kyle Guy, hopefully he gets hot and maybe can carry them to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, and farther. My second game in the South, I have Purdue and Tennessee. Tennessee playing good basketball, and Purdue having one of their better years too. Also with Coach Matt Painter, they have a veteran team. They have seniors who started as freshmen, and took lumps early, and then now they're veterans and they've been in this situation before. So I wouldn't count out Purdue. Moving down to the Midwest, I have North Carolina as a 1 seed and Auburn. Auburn is playing really good basketball, ACC champions. I really think they're going to be the surprise of the tournament. And then my last game in the Midwest is the obvious Kentucky Wildcats, always having a good freshman class. Coach Calipari knows what to do with freshmen and know how to win with freshmen. They're just athletes. Tyler Herro on Kentucky is playing really good basketball right now. He can really, they can put 5-6 players out there that can fill it up. So, obviously don't count out Kentucky. They're always there every year. And then my other upset, if you say they don't make it to that game, is Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State, I feel like they're going to get hot. They got some athletes on the team. They got some length. They got a really good big guy in the middle in Caleb Wesson. Caleb Wesson playing his best basketball he's played since he's been at Ohio State. Sophomore. They also have a sophomore in Musa Jallow, who held Romeo Langford to 6 or 7 points against IU in the tournament. He can guard anybody in the country. I think you put him on Hero, you put him on whoever you want in Kentucky. I'm pretty sure he's going to lock him up. You got a veteran guard in C.J. Jackson. You got Andre Wesson, which is Caleb's brother, and you got Woods that can really fill it up too. That's played really well in the Big Ten tournament. So I got some surprises in the Sweet 16, but mostly high seeds. I will say I do have Virginia going all the way to the Final Four and beating Michigan State in the final game 72-68. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Sean Berry.
All right, guys, how's it going? Starting up in the East, my first Sweet 16 matchup, I got obvious Duke beating UCF to make it there, take on Virginia Tech after they beat Liberty, who upsets Mississippi State. And then right below that, I'm kind of torn because I feel like if Belmont can win their play-in game, I got them beating LSU in the second round because I just don't trust Maryland because it's just Maryland. But if Belmont can somehow loses to Temple, I got LSU making it to the Sweet 16. I'll just have to wait and see on that play-in game. But right now I got LSU just for the sake of it. And then I got Michigan State defeating Louisville to move up. And now I got Duke beating Virginia Tech because it's Duke. Virginia Tech ain't got anyone that can guard Zion. And then LSU versus Michigan State, I got Michigan State, as in Coach McNabb stated earlier. Like last year when Arizona had their big scandal and everyone thought, oh, they're a 4 seed, they can make a big run. Buffalo beats them by 30 in the first round. You just can't play well if that stuff's surrounding your team. So I got Duke versus Michigan State in that Elite Eight round with Duke winning. Move down to the West. I got Syracuse upsetting Gonzaga to move on to the Sweet 16 because Syracuse always gets a low seed in about past 3 years, and they make a run because when you got a 2-3 zone with about 6'8", 6'8", and 6'11 on the bottom half, it's kind of hard to score the basketball sometimes. And then I got Florida State defeating Murray State in the other round, move on to Sweet 16. And then I got Texas Tech defeating Buffalo to move on, with Michigan narrowly beating Nevada, which I believe will happen, but Nevada's also a very solid team. And then Cuse versus Florida State, I got Florida State winning. As JT said earlier, Florida State's playing some really good basketball at the moment. And I got Texas Tech beating Michigan because Texas Tech's solid. They got Jarrett Culver, probably be a top 5-8 pick in the NBA draft, puts about 19 a game. And Chris Beard might be one of the most underrated coaches in college basketball for what he's done at Texas Tech. And I got Texas Tech defeating Florida State to go to the Final Four. Hop up to the South bracket. I got Virginia versus Kansas State in my Sweet 16 matchup after Kansas State beat Wisconsin. Battle of the big man in Dean Wade and Ethan Happ if Dean Wade can stay healthy to play. And my money's on Dean Wade in that matchup because Kansas State is just a very good defensive team. And then I have them upsetting Virginia and move on to Elite Eight because Virginia is just always seems kind of struggle in the tournament. And you look in the past year or two, Kansas State plays pretty well in the tournament. And in the bottom half, I got Villanova beating Purdue to move on to the Sweet 16 because, well, Villanova's coach one of the best in the game, top 3 in my opinion. And Purdue, if Carson Edwards is not hitting his shots, they seem to struggle because he likes to keep shooting until he's out of a slump, and sometimes that can lead to way too many shots without any buckets. And now I got Tennessee defeating Iowa to move on to Sweet 16, and I got Tennessee defeating Nova to take on Kansas State, with Tennessee advancing to the Final Four. Move down to the Midwest bracket. I got North Carolina defeating Utah State to make it to their Sweet 16 matchup against Auburn after they defeat Northeastern, who upsets Kansas in the first round because after Kansas' starting guard left the team early in the season, and then their big man had hand surgery out for the year, they just have not been the same team since then. So I have Northeastern upsetting them because they're a senior-laden team. Kansas is a bunch of freshmen, and it's just not been Kansas' year. Sometimes that happens. But then I got Auburn defeat Northeastern, take on North Carolina. North Carolina advancing to the Elite Eight. Then my bottom half bracket, I got Houston defeating Iowa State to move on to their Sweet 16 matchup because it's Houston. They're 31-3 this year. Give up 59 points a game, top defensive team in the nation. And then I got Kentucky defeating Wofford, move on, take on Houston, where I have Houston winning because Houston, if you remember last year, they were a very solid team, and it took a crazy buzzer beater by Jordan Poole of Michigan to knock them out from making a incredible run, kind of like Michigan did. Michigan went to the national championship. Without that shot, who knows what happens. I believe Houston keeps on their back. They upset Kentucky, take on North Carolina. But that's where the dream run ends, with North Carolina defeating Houston to make it to the Final Four. And then I got Duke getting beat by North Carolina in the championship of a score of 78-75. And here's Marcus with his predictions.
So in the Sweet 16 first round, obviously you got Duke and Virginia Tech. Duke wins that game by probably 15 or more. Then you go down to I have Belmont upsetting Maryland and LSU, take on Michigan State. And once again, like Coach McNabb said, Michigan State always plays well in March. It's not really a surprise if they play well. So you can't count them out. So they beat Belmont. And then going down to the West bracket, I have Syracuse upsetting Gonzaga to take on Florida State. Syracuse, that 2-3 zone that they have, they're just a really good defensive team, and I think they can hold off Gonzaga. But I do think Florida State will win that game. Then I have Texas Tech and Michigan. Michigan's playing some good basketball. They have been for the past 2 years going into the tournament. They play well in March, but Texas Tech, I think, can upset them. In my opinion, it's an upset to beat Michigan to go to the Elite Eight. Then on the South region, I have Virginia and Wisconsin. Ethan Happ, I really like him. Big Ten team, like that too. But I have Virginia winning that to go to the Elite Eight. Then I have Purdue and Villanova. And Villanova, I think, will just win that game in the second round because I think Carson Edwards just chucks sometimes and hopes they go in. And I think if IU can hold him to 3 for, 29 in a game, then I think Villanova can. But I have Villanova falling to Tennessee in the Sweet 16 to put Tennessee in the Elite Eight. Then going down to the Midwest, I have North Carolina. I actually have North Carolina going all the way against Auburn. Auburn's playing really good basketball, but I think the North Carolina can get a big win over them. And then Iowa State and Kentucky playing. I have Kentucky because Kentucky and Coach Calipari is always going to play well in March. And they're usually a high seed, so that helps. But North Carolina, Kentucky, North Carolina. My biggest matchup in this 2019 NCAA bracket is Duke and Michigan State. I think that's just going to be a hard-fought matchup for Duke, but I do not think that Duke can get past Michigan State, and I have Michigan State going to the final game and losing to North Carolina. And back to you, Coach McNabb.
All right, let's get into my Elite Eight real quick. Starting in the East with that matchup Marcus just previewed there with Duke, Michigan State. A lot of people are going to pick Duke to win it all this year. They're 2-1 favorites in Vegas, which no one's been that much of a favorite since Kentucky back in 2014. Kentucky got to the Final Four, but I believe were beat by, I think, Wisconsin. So Duke, Michigan State, it's going to be a back-and-forth battle between two Hall of Fame coaches and two great programs. But ultimately, I feel like Duke is going to come out on top in that game. Just too much star power, too much talent, and ultimately Zion is the difference. So Duke advances to the Final Four. where they will take on the Michigan Wolverines, who get past Florida State in the Elite Eight matchup that I have down in the West. So Duke, Michigan on one half of the Final Four. Over to the Midwest, I've got a blue blood Elite Eight matchup in North Carolina and Kentucky. This game is another game that could be in the Final Four as well, but it just happens to be taking place in the Elite Eight. North Carolina, I feel like, is experienced with Luke May and company, but also has great freshmen as well. That's going to help them advance past Kentucky to get to the Final Four. And my Final Four team will be the Virginia Cavaliers. They're going to get past Tennessee to get to the Final Four to take on North Carolina. So, as you can see here, I've got 3 of the 1 seeds, all from the ACC. I'm gonna argue against JT's point earlier about the Big Ten being the best conference in basketball, only because I feel like if you've got 3 1 seeds coming out of the same conference, that's going to trump anything that the Big Ten or any other conference can say. Now, the Big Ten has the most teams in the tournament. However, the ACC having 3 1 seeds is just really good, and I feel like they're all going to represent the ACC in the Final Four. Is that going to happen? Probably most likely not, but that's just what I've got on my sheet of integrity this year. I'll only fill out 1 bracket. First Final Four matchup, Duke-Michigan. I've got Duke. And second Final Four matchup, I've got Virginia topping North Carolina. And, just for fun this year, I'm going to go with the ultimate storyline of 16 seed defeating a 1 last year in Virginia. And what better way to kind of to forget about that than cutting the nets down. So Virginia, and also only because Duke is going to be picked by basically the entire nation. And if Virginia happens to beat Duke, that's going to bode well for my bracket in these challenges that I'm in. There's not a lot of value in picking Duke to win it all this year because most everybody will. So anyways, Duke, Virginia, 75-74 with Virginia squeaking out a great national title game. Can't wait for this tournament to get started tonight with the play-in games. Should be a great tournament, as it always is. I think this was one of the tougher brackets I've had to fill out. Just because I think there's about 8 to 10 teams that can potentially cut the nets down. I think it's going to be a lot of I don't see a lot of big upsets like there always is. I'm probably wrong on that as well, but I just think it's going to be a lot of the top seeds advancing through the tournament and eventually getting to the Final Four in Minneapolis. So but throw it back over to JW here. He's going to give you his Final Four and final game. And thanks for joining us. I'll close it out here in about 5 minutes. Here you go, Jack.
All right, so in my Final Four, I have Duke, Florida State, Tennessee, and North Carolina. I have Duke advancing, and I have North Carolina advancing for another ACC matchup. I have Duke winning that game 65-61. I hate to say it, but Zons, I don't hate to say that he's the best player, but I hate to say that Duke's going to win it all because it's just Duke, and that's how everybody is against him. But that's what I have is Duke as the national champion.
All right. In my Final Four, I have the obvious Duke. That Duke-Michigan State game matchup that I have in the Elite Eight will be a battle. Like Coach McNabb said, it'll come down to the wire. I can see either team pulling that one out. But right now, I'm going to have to go with Duke pulling that game out. And in my second game of the Final Four, as much as I would like to see them in the Final Four, I don't think Ohio State will get past Kentucky. Kentucky's just too much to handle. They have more athletes than Ohio State. Even though Ohio State might be a little bit more experienced, I just think Kentucky has more firepower to get past that game. And then Virginia, like Coach McNabb said, it'd be a great storyline. I'm banking on Virginia getting hot. I want to see, like I said, Kai Guy is probably my favorite college basketball player. I want to see him do his thing. So I have Virginia, Duke, Kentucky, and Florida State in my Final Four. And then I have Virginia and Duke playing it in the final game, and Virginia winning 72-68. I changed up my Duke-Michigan State game in the Elite Eight. When I first talked earlier, I had Michigan State winning that game, but Duke's firepower, I just had to put Duke over Michigan State and then Duke over Florida State in the final game. But I think Virginia will come out up top. Just they live and die by the three, and I'm just, kind of taking that chance of them getting hot. So hopefully Virginia can get it done, and it'll be a great tournament. Like Coach said, it's one of the tougher brackets I've filled out, just because any team can get hot, any team can get lucky, just like any other year. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I'm gonna pass it over to Sean.
Like I stated earlier, my Final Four matchups, I got Duke advancing out of the East, Texas Tech coming out of the West, Tennessee in the South, North Carolina in the Midwest, with a championship game in Minneapolis of Duke versus North Carolina, with the Tar Heels coming out on top with a 78-75 victory.
My Final Four, once again, in the East, I have Michigan State over Duke, which is going to be a really hard-fought game and a good game. Out of the West, I have Florida State beating Texas Tech. Out of the South, I have Tennessee because Tennessee's playing pretty good basketball right now, and I think they can beat Virginia. And out of the Midwest, I have North Carolina beating Kentucky, which puts them in the Final Four. Then I have North Carolina beating Tennessee to go to the final game, Michigan State beating Florida State to go to the final game, and North Carolina winning it with a final score of 82-79.
All right, so roughly 30 minutes here of bracket breakdowns, and we hope you are tuned in and enjoyed what the guys had to say about their brackets. It should be a great tournament. Obviously, to a lot of people's disgust and dismay, IU is not represented in this year's tournament. They are, however, in the NIT, which starts tonight. They host St. Francis at Assembly Hall. Disappointing year for the Hoosiers, to say the least. When they defeated a good Marquette team who's a 5 seed in this tournament and defeated them handily, you would have thought that they were well on their way to a similar season as Marquette or even better. But, here we are, 4 or 5 months later, and they're watching from the couch. So certainly frustrating as for a Hoosier fan. Went to several games this year, and I know some of these guys went to a lot of games as well. And and it's kind of salt in the wound for the boys is that last night the women's team were picked to be in their tournament as a 10 seed. So it's just kind of when you got the women's team who's not been traditionally as talented and as successful as the men's now starting to make the tournament. They won the NIT last year, and the men haven't made the tournament probably in 3 or 4 years. I feel like it's been 3 straight seasons, I think, since they've made the tournament. I don't know. It's I feel like it's just not enough, and I know a lot of people are frustrated with that, but it is what it is, and they'll move on and hopefully improve and be there in the years to come. So thanks for joining us, guys. We really appreciate it. We'll come back after spring break with another podcast updating where the tournament is at that point. It's actually going to be over when we come back from spring break. Championship game will be the Monday, I think, we get back. So a lot of basketball will be played between now and the next time you hear from us. So enjoy. Best of luck to all of you that are participating in some bracket challenges and some office pools. When in doubt, take the teams that are always there with a few upsets. That's kind of the mindset I've always went into brackets with. So also just want to say that the softball team is opening their season tonight at Northeast DuBois. And then next week when we have our spring break, the boys and the girls are both going to down near Memphis, Tennessee to open up their seasons. And we're looking forward to that tremendously. So, next week when you're at home over spring break, pay attention to social media and things like that, and you'll be getting updates and scores and pictures, I'm sure, from our spring break trip down in Memphis. So enjoy the tournament, and it was a pleasure being with you guys today. The guys enjoyed it. They enjoy filling the brackets out and enjoy getting their opinions out to all of you. So happy March Madness. It's the best time of the year. Have a good one, guys.